The coastal town of Zarephath was alive with music, laughter, and trade. The streets bustled with merchants, their stalls overflowing with figs, olives, and colorful fabrics. Children darted between the market stands, chasing one another under the warm glow of the morning sun. In a modest home on the edge of the city lived Naomi, her husband Eliab, and their young son, Jonan. Their days were simple, filled with work, laughter, and love. Naomi baked bread with hands both gentle and strong. Eliab sharpened tools for the fishing boats, while Jonan filled their home with endless chatter and play. And beside them was Hannah, a loyal helper and friend, who had long been part of the family. Life was not grand, but it was good. One bright morning, Jonan burst into the room, waving a little wooden bird. His laughter rang out like music. Naomi smiled warmly, her apron dusted with flour, while Eliab teased, warning that the toy bird might end up in the stew pot if Jonan wasn't careful. The family laughed together, their joy filling the room. Later that day, they walked through the bustling marketplace. The air was rich with the smell of baked bread and roasted grain. Merchants called out, urging passers-by to taste their apples and buy their cloth. Eliab bought Jonan an apple, and the boy's wide-eyed delight brought smiles to both his parents' faces. But beneath the laughter of the crowd, a note of unease was growing. Two merchants argued nearby. One warned that the rains had come late, that the skies had been silent too long. Another brushed it aside, urging sacrifices to Baal, confident that their God would provide. The people murmured, uncertain, as the shadow of fear slipped quietly into their joy. Naomi noticed, her smile faltering for just a moment. She squeezed Eliab's hand. He looked back at her with the strength of a man who wanted to protect his family from every storm, but even he could not hide the worry in his eyes. That evening, their little family sat down to supper, the warm glow of the oil lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. Jonan, sleepy from the day, asked the question that weighed on every heart. "Papa," he whispered, "will the rain stop here too?" Eliab fell silent for a moment, then placed a gentle hand on his son's hair. "Do not worry, my son," he said softly. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." Naomi's voice joined his, calm and steady. "And we will trust in the Lord who cares for his people." Together, they bowed their heads in prayer. But far away, in the hills of Israel, another story was unfolding. There the prophet Elijah stood before King Ahab, his voice thundering with the authority of the living God. "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives," he declared, "there shall be neither dew nor rain in the land, except at my word." The skies above seemed to shudder at his words, and a low rumble of thunder echoed across the distance. Back in Zarephath, the days passed with their usual rhythm, yet a quiet unease began to stir beneath the laughter of the marketplace. The merchants still called out their wares, children still played in the streets, but the skies had grown strangely silent. The rains that once kissed the earth had not come, and though the people told themselves it was only a delay, fear was taking root. Naomi noticed it first in the whispers of her neighbors. At the well, women spoke in hushed voices, wondering why the heavens held back their waters. In the marketplace, merchants argued, one insisting the drought had begun, another promising that Baal would send the rains if only the people offered more sacrifices. And so, Zarephath, once filled with laughter, now carried a shadow of worry. Eliab, determined to provide, worked longer hours by the harbor. He hauled nets, sharpened tools, and tried to ignore the growing emptiness of the sky. When he returned home in the evenings, his shoulders were heavy, but his smile remained steady, for Naomi and for Jonan. Naomi saw the lines deepening on her husband's face. She said little, but each night as she prepared their simple meal, her heart whispered prayers that the Lord would remember them. Jonan, too young to understand, only felt the tension. He played with his wooden bird, but his laughter was softer now. Sometimes he would stop mid-play and ask, "Mama, why do people look so worried? Will the rain come soon?" Naomi gathered him into her arms, pressing his head against her shoulder. "Do not be afraid, my son," she whispered, though her own heart trembled. "The Lord sees us. He will not forget." Meanwhile, in the wider land, the drought was no longer rumor. The prophet Elijah had spoken, and the skies obeyed. In Israel, streams began to dry, fields lay bare, and the cries of the hungry grew louder each day. Word of this prophet's boldness spread even to Sidon, where Jezebel, queen of Israel and worshipper of Baal, raged against him. But in Zarephath, the people had not yet felt the full weight of what was coming. Their wells still held water. Their stores still had grain. And yet, with each passing day, the whispers grew louder. Some turned their faces toward Baal's altars, offering sacrifices with desperate hope. Naomi and Eliab, however, clung to the God of Israel, the unseen yet living God. And though their faith remained, a shadow of doubt crept at the edges of their hearts. One evening, as the family gathered for supper, a hot wind swept through the streets, carrying dust instead of cool air. The lamps flickered as Hannah set the table. Jonan looked out the window and asked again, "Papa, why won't it rain?" Eliab paused, his strong hands resting on the table. He drew in a slow breath, then looked at his son with steady eyes. "Because, Jonan, the Lord has spoken. And when he speaks, the earth listens. We do not understand it now, but we will trust him." Naomi's gaze lingered on her husband. His words were firm, but she saw the weight in them, the quiet fear he tried to hide. That night, as the family prayed, the sound of laughter from the streets was gone. Instead, silence pressed against the windows, broken only by the cry of a hungry child somewhere in the distance. And above them, the stars shone cold and unyielding, as if the heavens themselves had turned their face away. The storm had not yet come, but the whispers had become undeniable. Later that night, Naomi stood by her window, gazing at the stars, unaware that the heavens were preparing to close. Her life was about to change forever. And thus began a journey of faith. A journey that would test her strength, her hope, and her heart.